Welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. In this particular episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about asylum issues because I've had some cases in the very recent past that I believe they didn't quite understand the procedures once the asylum was granted as to what they're supposed to do. So I want to clarify for those people, what it means to win an asylum and then what you're supposed to do afterwards. So the asylum, you can, if you're inside the United States, you would be called an asylee. And of course, if you're outside the U.S., you're called a refugee. But I'm talking about when you're inside the United States and you have applied for asylum. Now, you can apply for asylum either affirmatively to the asylum office, where you wait, depending where you are, 2 to 4 years. But once you get the interview, if it's granted, you will be granted asylum. Now, the grant of asylum itself does not mean that you have the green card or that you're a lawful permanent resident. So whether you apply affirmatively through the asylum office or you get pulled into deportation or removal proceedings and you have to apply for asylum, and then ultimately, if granted, the judge grants you asylum, the judge grant of the asylum or the asylum officer's grant of asylum means that you, for the next year, will be able to basically remain on your same status as a granted asylee. But then, after that 1 year, then you apply for lawful permanent residency for the green card. Now, you can go year after year after year without applying for the green card and just stay on asylee status. But the reality is that if the immigration wants to make a motion to reopen the proceedings, or if your country condition, changes, like for example, let's say that you were granted asylum based on, for example, female genital mutilation. Okay. Um, and let's say that that came from some country in Africa, and let's say that 2 years, 3 years after you won asylum, they completely outlawed that process. Well, in that particular case, it's very doable that the immigration could pull you back into court and retract the grant of asylum. Additionally, let's say that it was the one-child policy from China, for example, and of course that has disappeared. And let's say that was the reason you were granted asylum. So the bottom line is, it's somewhat dangerous and risky for you to have been granted asylum and not applied for the green card when you're supposed to, and just think it's okay to go year after year after year just renewing your work permit. Because once you apply for the green card and become resident, then after a certain number of years you can apply for citizenship. So that is the process. So I've just seen some similar cases where people just thought that they could, once the judge granted it, or once the asylum officer granted it, that they were home free, and they're not. You must apply for the green card. Okay, so if you like the video, click like, subscribe, and more on the coming weeks.